Welcome, chess fans. In today's video, we'll focus on how to play against the Ruy Lopez opening after white developed with bishop to g5. This classic opening can be tricky, but I'll show you key strategies and ideas to handle it confidently. Let's dive in and take the first step toward mastering this opening. After the move bishop to g5, you first play pawn to a6, pushing the bishop one step back. Following that, I recommend playing pawn to d6. Afterward, if your opponent castles, which is the most popular continuation, instead of going for the passive move bishop to d7, we're going to adopt a more aggressive approach by playing bishop to g4. This move serves two purposes. It pins the knight to the queen. It sets up an opportunity to castle queenside, enabling you to launch a powerful kingside attack. After bishop to g4, your opponent might respond with pawn to h3, attempting to break the pin. Here, instead of retreating, you play pawn to h5, creating a subtle trap. The beauty of this move is that even if your opponent doesn't fall for the trap, it aligns with your overall strategy. If white plays bishop takes g4, they make a critical mistake. This opens up the h-file, and you can quickly exploit it to deliver checkmate. For example, if white plays something like knight to h2 or knight to e1, you bring your queen into the attack. And the game is essentially over as your pieces align for a devastating assault on the king. If white tries to create an escape square for their king by pushing a pawn, you can shut it down with pawn to g3, locking the king in and setting up an imminent checkmate. Returning to the position after pawn to h5, if white avoids pawn takes g4, they will often find themselves frustrated by the pin. This dynamic setup provides you with strong attacking chances while keeping white under constant pressure. White will usually play the standard move pawn to c3, as is common in the Ruy Lopez. You can respond with the move queen to f6, which is an excellent, multifunctional move. Pressure on the knight. By placing your queen on f6, you apply pressure to the pinned knight. If you choose, you can trade the bishop for the knight, breaking up white's pawn structure, which is advantageous. Queenside castling opportunity. The move clears the path for your king to castle queenside. While you don't need to castle immediately, it gives you the flexibility to do so when needed. Preventing pawn to d4. Your queen also controls the d4 square, stopping white from pushing their pawn to d4. This move is key for white to gain activity, and your queen prevents it effectively. With these strategic benefits, queen to f6 keeps you in control of the game while maintaining the pressure on white's position. Your queen is now targeting the knight and preparing to trade, potentially winning the pawn on c2 if white pushes pawn to d4. To avoid this, most opponents will instead play pawn to d3, a more modest move aimed at simple development. Generally, your plan is straightforward. Castle queenside to secure your king. Push your pawns forward aggressively on the kingside to launch a strong attack. This is the essence of your strategy. However, you need to be cautious and consider white's possible responses. Playing pawn to g5 immediately is not an option, as white can simply capture it. Castling queenside right away might also be risky because white could trade on c6, weakening your pawn structure and creating attacking opportunities. To address these concerns, you play knight to e7. This move serves multiple purposes. It supports the knight on c6, ensuring you don't have to worry about white capturing it. It acts as a waiting move, allowing you to see how white plans to proceed. At this point, white will likely play knight to d2 to break the pin on their knight. However, this move also blocks the bishop on c1, no longer attacks the diagonal, allowing you to freely push pawn to g5 without fear of capture. This begins a massive pawn storm on the kingside. White has very limited options to stop this attack. They might respond with rook to e1, a standard move, or something similar. At this point, you play bishop to d7, an elegant move that serves two purposes. It neutralizes the pin on your knight. It clears the path for your pawns to advance and intensify the attack. After a series of natural moves, white finds themselves in a completely lost position, unable to defend against your relentless kingside assault. In this game, white tried knight to h2, a reasonable move, anticipating your push of pawn to g4. However, you go ahead and play pawn to g4 anyway, breaking open white's kingside. After the pawn trade, your rook gets actively involved in the attack. White responded with knight to f1, a good defensive move aimed at reinforcing their kingside. While you may not deliver an immediate checkmate here, you simply continue your development, such as castling queenside, maintaining a long-term attack. Eventually, your consistent pressure will break white's defenses, and you will secure a decisive victory with a crushing kingside attack. White played pawn to f3, possibly aiming to create space for their king or trade off the pawn on g4. However, black responded with a brilliant combination. Black played pawn to g3, sacrificing the pawn to open lines for an attack. After white captured, black followed up with rook takes h2, eliminating one of white's key defenders. If white captures the rook, black delivers queen to h4, a check forcing the king to move. As a result, black gained 2 minor pieces for the rook while maintaining an overwhelming attack. From here, black has numerous ways to continue. Play bishop to g7 to activate another piece. Bring the second rook to the h-file to intensify the pressure. Use the knight, repositioning it to h4 or f4 for further threats. Not only does black have a significant material advantage, but their kingside attack is unstoppable, leading to an easy win. This demonstrates black's consistent attacking strategy. Against various white responses, the plan remains the same: launch a decisive kingside attack. If white tries to deviate by playing the more ambitious pawn to d4, a standard move in the Ruy Lopez, their focus on the center overlooks your earlier preparation with queen to f6, which indirectly controls the d4 square. You can simply capture the pawn on d4, maintaining your advantage while deflecting white's attention away from your kingside attack. First, you play pawn to b5 to neutralize the pin on your knight, freeing it for movement. Once the bishop retreats, you're ready to capture the pawn on d4, eliminating a key defender. After white trades pawns, you recapture with your queen, completing the exchange. Now, you are ready to capture the pawn on d4, gaining a material advantage. If white captures back, you're prepared to recapture, maintaining your position. This shows that white's attempt with pawn to d4 has effectively failed. It's worth noting that if white plays bishop to d5 to pressure your position, it's not a serious threat. You have a simple defensive response, knight to e7, which both defends your other knight and threatens the bishop on d5. In fact, bishop to d5 achieves nothing significant for white and can backfire. Against your move pawn to d6, if white castles kingside, it can lead to a dangerous position for them. While castling kingside is not inherently wrong, in practical games, it often leads to white being vulnerable to a strong attack. This allows you to play bishop to g4, develop an attack on the kingside, bring your queen to f6, and push your pawns forward for a crushing assault. White is frequently unprepared and struggles to counter this aggressive plan. If white tries to respond to your pawn to d6 with pawn to d4, attempting to take advantage of the pin on your knight, you can neutralize it easily. You play pawn to b5, forcing the bishop to retreat to bishop to b3. Then, you trade pawns on d4. They've actually made a losing mistake. Here's how the trap unfolds. You play pawn to c5, attacking white's queen. When the queen moves back, you follow up with pawn to c4, trapping white's bishop on b3. The bishop has no escape. If white plays queen to d5 in an attempt to create counterplay by attacking your rook, you need to be cautious. Instead of pushing pawn to c4 immediately, you play bishop to e6 first. This move attacks white's queen, covers the e7 square, neutralizing white's counterplay. When the queen retreats, you then push pawn to c4, completing your main idea and winning the trapped bishop. If white tries to deliver a check, you calmly block it with the bishop, forcing the queen to move again. Finally, you relocate your bishop to d7, defending your rook and ensuring it is no longer under attack. At this point, white is in a completely losing position, as their bishop is trapped and they lack any meaningful counterplay. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this video, then subscribe.